So as Holly said, we're here for a public hearing on a proposed grow-out site in West Galveston Bay. And the purpose of this public hearing, is to provide information about cultivated oyster mariculture and the site in West Galveston Bay, answer any questions on the proposed sites, and give you instructions on how to submit public comment. Just quickly, some background on cultivated oyster mariculture, or COM, as I'll abbreviate it throughout this presentation, is that TPWD permits the activity of COM at grow-out sites, also called oyster farms, and nursery hatchery facilities. This is cage or off-bottom mariculture. The applicants nominate their own sites and conduct a natural resource survey at the sites. TPWD, the permit from TPWD has a 10-year term with annual fees paid yearly based on size. This activity, mariculture activity, is only for eastern oyster. And there is also an active use criteria we have so that making sure that sites are being utilized. Some different types of gear that you may see at oyster mariculture, are floating bags that have floats underneath. Oysters are held in the bags and they float at the surface. A larger version of that would be floating cages. So the floating cages have larger floats, and then the bags fit in a structure around that, and these can be used either when the oysters are in the water, you'll see the floats up and the oysters underneath, or they can be flipped for drying and desiccation of the oysters and to prevent biofouling. There also another gear type are the adjustable long line system, where there are poles that line is strung through, and baskets, a type of cage, also usually called baskets, are on that line, and those lines are moved up and down in the water column to position the oysters. And also there are flip style cages, baskets, that they're kind of those individual baskets that you would see on an adjustable longline system, but a smaller float over that. They're close together on a line, and if you see in this picture, they usually have an apparatus for a boat to go through that flips those baskets easily. This activity is not just regulated by TPWD. They must get authorizations from other agencies such as General Land Office, TCEQ, Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Coast Guard. Harvest is allowed year-round, but they must comply with all Texas Department of State Health Services regulations. And just a little bit on those regulations, because this is a food and it's highly regulated both at the state and federal level, that the Department of Health classifies bodies of water for many aspects, but in context of this, for oyster harvest or shellfish harvest. That classification for harvest classification for shellfish just pertains to the shellfish and does not affect any other activity within that body of water. And this is based on sampling of the water and history of sampling of the water for things like oxygen salinity, but for the health department also looking at potential contaminants that would be uptaken by the oysters. So if a area is classified as approved or conditionally approved, that is deemed safe for the oysters to grow there for human consumption. And if you want more information about that type of classification, you can go to the Department of Health State Health Services website in the Seafood and Aquatic Life group. Now to the reason we're here. The proposed site is in Galveston Bay. We're calling this proposed GB for Galveston Bay Site A. It is an oyster grow-out site, so farm. and it is located in the West Galveston Bay Shellfish Harvest Area TX9, which are approved waters, and is proposed 5 acres. Here is kind of a vicinity map. So again, located in Galveston County in the West Galveston Bay, and then when you zoom in, this is a more specific location of that farm and proposed site with the coordinates there. They have various proposed routes to reach their site, either coming from the Galveston Island shoreline of Chocolate up through Chocolate Bayou, or through different boat ramps in Galveston Bay. These routes avoid sensitive habitat areas. A summary of the proposed operations plan is to use the floating cages, the 6 bay or 6 bag system. The anchors will be platypus anchors, so those main lines that hold the cages anchored with the platypus anchor system using polypropylene lines. And over each anchor point, they will have a yellow, 12-inch yellow buoy to identify where those anchors are and help the line visibility. There will be navigational markers per Coast Guard requirements that will give a determination on that, but corner markers are proposed to be cylindrical buoys with lights on them and proper signage. If birds become a nuisance or a problem, the proposed bird deterrents are using the hawk away kite system, so it's a kite that looks like a bird. Also using ticklers or zip ties on cages, floats that stick up and predict that the birds don't want to kind of land on that. So this is an overall site layout of the 5 acres. As it is kind of difficult to kind of discern, what it has is 3 columns of cages. So on each line, stretch of line would be 14 cages divided by 3 columns, and then up to 32 rows. In between each row pair would be 20 feet distance for allowing boat access and working that, and then in between the smaller portion of those pairs, proposed 10 foot. Here's a cross-section of the proposed gear showing the anchoring on the bottom, these anchor point buoys, and then the main line. Off the main line, each cage is attached at 2 points, and this diagram shows in various positions where what called the feeding position, where the oysters are down in the water, the desiccation position, oysters are up, and then if needed during a tropical storm, sinking the cages to the bottom. They propose to access the site multiple times a week via boat and flip the cages for desiccation. That desiccation generally is a 24-hour or under process once a week or as needed. The gear that it requires extensive cleaning will be taken to land for that cleaning and sanitation. Oysters will be tumbled and sorted as needed on the site, or if weather conditions prevent safely doing that, taken to a named on-land location. And then inventories, resubmergence logs, harvest logs will be maintained via farm management software. All gear will have the required identification tags with contact information, and their proposed hurricane plan is a coding system, a yellow-red kind of when things are moderate storms, when they enter Gulf, as they get closer, it is a yellow, and then prior to a storm that's closer, that's that code red, and just termination of whether sinks, they will need to sink cages, or if it's a lower winds, just adjust the lines. They also have pre-storm preparation plans of inventorying gear and continued checking of maintenance, and then post-storm recovery plan, including assessing the site for damage and refloating cages if needed. For the site, the Natural Resource Survey was conducted. It used side scan and sediment samples. Here is the image of side scan. Did not see any significant features on that side scan. The sediment samples collected with a post hole digger. Here's two examples of pictures of those, and consisted of mud. So these pictures are definitely representative of all the different samples they took of mud. The average depth across the site portion was 6.9 to 7.3 feet. There was no evidence of oyster habitat or seagrass in any of the samples or the survey. So the next steps for this proposed site are taking public comment, continue to take public comment. The public comment period ends on June 10th. And if you have public comment, you submit that via email to that oyster.mariculture@tpwd.texas.gov email address. After the public comment period, if anything needs to be adjusted due to public comments, we'll take care of that. If not, then they will be issued their conditional permit. With this conditional permit, mariculture activity cannot yet begin, but they have that conditional permit to go to the other agencies to begin to secure those other agencies' authorizations and permissions. Once those are all done, they come back to TPWD, then we can authorize that final permit and issue it after we receive the payment for that first annual fee, and then mariculture activity can begin. So now we'll just take a brief pause. So if you have any questions, you can type it into that Q&A box, and we'll answer any questions you may have. If not, or you have questions at a later date, you can also email your questions to the Oyster Mariculture email address, same place that you would provide public comment. So we'll just wait a second so that if anybody is typing questions, or that they have a chance to do so. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, but again, if you have questions at a later date, you can email. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Holly to do some final reminders. If a question comes in while Holly's doing that, we'll go back to answering it. But otherwise, thank you all for attending,